The second installment in Capcom's long-running Resident Evil series arrived back on the 25th of January 2019, reimagined from the ground up. Surprisingly, it does manage to capture the same essence of classical survival horror that the previous entries to the series had, and which made it so memorable back in the day, with the original Resident Evil back in 1996 on the original PlayStation. Resident Evil 2 takes a brand new and modernised view of the original Resident Evil 2, and it has been brilliantly done by the developers over at Capcom. They have taken the spark which gave the original the essence of what it was. So why was Resident Evil 2 even made to begin with? What cascades of events led it to be deemed necessary to create? Well, since Resident Evil 4, leading up to the catastrophe which was Resident Evil 6. I'm actually in no way saying that Resident Evil 4 was a bad game. In fact, it's considered to be one of the best games created of all time. It has the perfect blend of suspenseful horror, and tense action. I'm merely stating that although Resident Evil 4 was a good game, it set the action trend, which grew to be excessive later in the series. Resident Evil 4 forgo the horror elements and in favour for more action. The series had slowly shifted from this suspenseful horror to this tense action, which was a stark contrast to the foundations of survival horror, or horror in general. This led to Resident Evil 6, which didn't even try and conceal the fact that it was no longer survival horror. Upon release, the game was met with mediocre appraisal from fans. However, it did sell significantly well, 11.6 million copies over time. However, Capcom was not happy about losing their primary fan base, and so froze all development on the future games for a thorough rethink. And in 2017, Capcom released Resident Evil 7, which refocused the series back on survival horror with a change of perspective to a first-person perspective, and there was significantly less action. In a way, Resident Evil 2 Remake was almost Capcom's way of apologising to its fanbase for past mistakes. Fans had been asking for a remake since the first Resident Evil remake back in 2002, which had an improved story, less rigid dialogue, complete graphical overhaul, smoother gameplay, added gameplay features such as the Crimson Heads. Fans thought that if there was to be a Resident Evil 2 remake, it would have followed in the same vein as Resident Evil 1, only it wasn't exactly like that. Unlike Resident Evil 1 Remake, Resident Evil 2 features an over-the-shoulder camera perspective. Although this is typically attributed to action-oriented games, Resident Evil 2 uses clever ways to subtly make the player play in the way of classic fixed camera angles. Although you can move while aiming and shooting, your crosshair significantly increases so your shots are less accurate. Similarly, when you are standing still, your crosshair focuses into a point, making your shots more accurate and increase your chances of getting a critical hit. This is used to emulate the classic tank controls of the original in a modern way. Additionally, Resident Evil 2 also subverts the typical zombie tropes of always aiming for the head. Zombies typically take 9 to 12 shots in the head, or can even take as much as a whole clip. It's much more efficient to cripple them in the legs or lower body and then just run around them.
Was zur Hölle?
Resident Evil 2 again uses the classic survivor horror elements, backtracking through claustrophobic hallways, central hubs, elaborate keys to unlock areas, puzzle solving, limited ammo, limited inventory space, and discouraged combat, amongst many things that make the game survival horror to its core. Additionally, an extra sense is utilised by the use of the lickers, which are mutated creatures that can only identify you by sound. So in order to get away scot-free, it is necessary to walk as slowly as you can to avoid detection. Moreover, there are many boss fights in the game, something that gives the whole story, from a gameplay perspective, structure. Every time you beat a boss, it reflects a significant hurdle being overcome, like a new stage of the game is being progressed into. There's also a sense of intimacy, which I quite like in the game. It's created by its environmental ambience and atmosphere, and how it reacts to you. So, for example, if I shoot a particular zombie in a particular spot, causing a wound in that particular spot, the game will always remember which particular zombie and which particular wound. So, upon returning in future to this particular zombie, it's identifiable and there's a link between past actions. So this instills in the player that the actions made in the present will directly affect the future. Resident Evil 2 follows the story of Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Leon is a rookie cop on his first day on the job, and Claire is the sister of the male protagonist in the first game, Chris Redfield. Claire comes to Raccoon City to find out what happened to her brother. These are new characters that are not present in the first game, so you don't need prior knowledge to the Resident Evil universe before playing. Although, playing the first game does make your experience much better. Ultimately, these two get trapped in the city and must find a way out. Along the way, Leon meets Ada Wong, who in this iteration of the story is an FBI agent, although she isn't really, she lied, and is secretly a freelance agent looking for an antidote to the genetically engineered T-virus, which is the virus which causes the population to turn into zombies. And Claire meets Sherry, who is the daughter of Dr. William Birkin, who is the creator of the G-virus. This is the new strain of the T-virus which causes overactive mutations, turning those infected into abominations. Of course, at the end, Leon and Claire stumble across an Umbrella Corporation, Umbrella being the company behind the viruses, Umbrella Corporation lab, and blow it up. I think that one of the reasons why Resident Evil 2's story holds up so well is that you're uncovering a mystery. And it also has great motivation of characters, but the main thing is that you're uncovering a mystery. Resident Evil 2 is good because there's an ongoing sense of discovery and mystery. What's happening? Why did this event happen? Who's behind it? What's the result? The result of it is it's always coming after you. It's the zombies. That's the result of it. But there's also all these third parties such as Mr. X, the Lickers. It's very good. It's simple but compelling. You're discovering what the heck is happening in Raccoon City, and you're experiencing it along the way with the characters, and you're getting introduced to new information. And I think that to this day makes it simple, effective, and compelling story. RE2 again uses the brilliantly photorealistic RE engine that debuted in Resident Evil 7. Unfortunately, words will just not do it justice. These visuals are absolutely incredible. These things are better to be shown. Furthermore, Resident Evil 2 uses great sound design, ambient music, to give it a really unsettling feel to the player. This is also coupled with zombie groans, and especially when you're walking down a long, cold corridor and you hear the reverberated groan of a zombie far in the distance. It gives you a real sense of dread. There are also these absolutely beautiful orchestral pieces, such as the Mr. X fight at the end, which is actually my favourite piece in the entire game, and this is only possible thanks to the brilliant RE engine.
What is it with this thing?
I've dedicated a whole section to Mr. X because I think it's quite worthy of its whole section. Mr. X is a tyrant, or Mr. X aka Tyrant 003, the third iteration of the Tyrant creature. You can think of it as a genetically modified Terminator. He's able to follow you around, open doors, or even climb upstairs, and is literally invincible. Though it is possible to stun him temporarily at considerable cost to ammunition. He can also be alerted when you fire a shot anywhere on the map, and will immediately start to head towards you. We're even able to hear his paranoia-inducing footsteps as he draws closer and closer. This is a great entry point for newcomers to the series, since it has the perfect blend between classic RE game mechanics and the new and modern graphics and gameplay. I think I would highly recommend this game. It's literally one of my favourite games and a very solid entry to the series. So if I had to rate it, I'll give it a 9.6 out of 10. Definitely a must play.
Resident Evil is a marvelous game. The game epitomizes everything gaming should be in the survival horror genre. What I find the most thrilling is how it returns to the roots of Resident Evil 2, it returns to the roots of the genre and the series, restoring the greatness it once held in everyone's hearts. Without a shadow of a doubt, Resident Evil 2 was not a feigned hope, but a fulfilled dream.
Can that be my review? Yeah, it's alright. Bruh, yeah, that's it.
Return to the classic survival horror. So finally, the second installment in Capcom's long-running Resident Evil series is here and reimagined, and surprisingly, it manages to return to the classic horror elements that made this series so memorable, starting all the way back in 1996 on the original PlayStation. Spooky, gothic starting area? Check. Limited ammo? Check. Unforgiving enemies? Check. This game has by far the darkest story of all Resident Evil titles, even Code Veronica. You don't need prior knowledge to the Resident Evil universe at all, as it's only loosely connected to the previous entries. Resident Evil 2 Remake takes a brand new and modernized view of the original Resident Evil 2. This has been brilliantly done by the developers over at Capcom. They have taken the spark which gave the original the essence that made it what it was. Slight changes over the game will give old-timers a sense of familiarity which will be greatly appreciated. Although this game does suffer from some very minor bugs, it is easily something that will be patched within a month. Saying that, this game is greatly optimized for anyone to play. This is a great entry point for newcomers to the series since it has the perfect blend between classic Resident Evil game mechanics and the new and modern graphics and gameplay. Do yourself a favour and don't skip on this one, as it's one of the best games I have played in early 2019 and a very solid entry to the series. 9.6 out of 10, definitely a must play.